This is Ratchaprasong, Bangkok's famous shopping district. Many political protests have taken place here in the past. The people's voice echoes loudly here. Thousands of people last week have gathered here defying an emergency decree calling for vast political changes. There are a new generation of young Thais who have been for months crying for change. Things changed very quickly in a matter of days, accelerated by a police crackdown that has only provoked a bigger response by the protesters. My colleague May Wong and I have been on the ground for days, day and night, rain or shine, to keep closely track of how the protests evolved and how defiance grew. We pieced together the first 5 days of When the People Speak in Bangkok. They came here earlier than expected. They were supposed to come here at 2 p.m. local time, but they came in here at 8 a.m. in the morning out of fear, out of concern that counter-protesters, royalists, might actually come here earlier to squat, to occupy this ground. So that's why they're here. The demands are all the same. They're still demanding for vast political reforms of the political system, including a new constitution, but also for reforms of the monarchy. Thousands of anti-government protesters have come out on the streets, marching from Democracy Monument to in front of Government House, the seat of the Thai government. The street leading to that now is now occupied. Now those people here that are out here at Government House, they're going to stay at least for one night. But this is going to be a test of patience for those that want to see vast political changes and those that are countering against them.
20 คนนะครับบนสะพานข้ามแยกลงมาลาดน้องข้างล่างดูมาแล้วเสื้อกล้ามมีใครมาสอบถามได้คนไหมเดี๋ยวรถแก้ขยายเสียงจะรอแป๊บนึงนะครับ
That might even anger and frustrate the protesters even more, and that could actually spur a nationwide coming together of the various protesters to try and show solidarity and to try and show support to demand for the release of these protest leaders. So we have yet to see what is going to happen, but this is definitely a developing situation.
Hundreds of people are now on the Ratchaprasong intersection here in central Bangkok, and as you can see, the situation is very fluid right now. Police have cordoned off the intersection as people are still trying to mill around and trying to push the police back as much as they can. Now, this is a situation that we have foreseen for some time ago as well already, as the police officers are trying to contain the situation here, but the protesters are also trying to make a statement here. They're trying to make their stand by occupying the Ratchaprasong intersection here, even though there are not as many people as there were yesterday on the streets in the historical heart of Bangkok, but there are still hundreds of people here shouting against the government of Prayut Chan-o-cha to get out.
Blatant defiance is exactly what you're seeing here right now. The protesters are clearly showing the fact that they are not caring about what the government is warning. They are out here, and they're out here for a reason, and they want to make sure that the government is hearing their opinions.
And if you can ask my cameraman to pan over there to see there are scores of people now apparently walking away from the protest side. I do not know where they're going right now yet. We do hear reports from water cannons being used on the protesters right now in front of Siam Center.
almost got sprayed by the water cannon earlier. But I didn't know that the water was going to be laced with tear gas inside or pepper spray. My entire face is stinging right now.
เด็กครับเขาไม่มีอาวุธเลยนะครับผมถ้าไม่ต้องทำรุนแรงขนาดนี้เขามาชุมนุมด้วยสันติครับ
They are not gathering at one single location. In fact, they have been asked to scatter themselves across multiple locations, not just here in the capital city of Bangkok, but across the country as well, as many of the protest leaders have already been arrested. So they're saying that there is no one leader, there is no two leaders, there is in fact everyone who is in charge of their own destiny and their own fate, as well as their own defiance to the government.
For the fifth time in a row, protesters came out in droves here in Bangkok, but also beyond that. And like in previous days, many have waited until the last minute, until the final destinations for the rally sites have been announced, including here in Victory Monument, one of the biggest places here in Bangkok, but also on other different sites as well. Now, as usual, this is a big place where they have chosen for the protest sites, also occupying the streets, including this roundabout here, making traffic stop, and also several BTS stations have also been closed in anticipation of the masses coming here as well. And that is a tactic that has worked so far on the second day in succession. The goal here is to come in, take over the place, do their thing, and then get out as quickly as possible before it gets to any confrontation with authorities and the police. Since then, the protests have continued almost on a daily basis and all across Thailand. Meanwhile, the Thai parliament is scrambling back from recess to find a political solution out of this crisis and address the loud calls for reform. Will that appease the young Thais seeking change? There are a new generation of Thai protesters that finally wants to end military dominance and royal prerogative in politics. One of their early slogans was, "Hey man chop thi run dao," it ends with our generation. And it seems they're in for the long haul.
It's been a rocky road to democracy in Myanmar. Its first free elections in 25 years came in 2015 after decades of military rule. Since then, it's been an uphill climb for the fledgling democracy. Its anticipated economic reforms have not quite paid off yet. The shine has worn off its national icon Aung San Suu Kyi as conflicts rage on in the country despite her promise of peace. And this year, COVID-19 has plunged the country and its young government into a health crisis. Despite coronavirus fears, Myanmar is pressing ahead with its next general election. It's time for the voters to take stock of how far the country has come in the last 5 years and decide who will be best to help them meet the challenges ahead.
In the 2015 election, the choice among majority of voters was clear. Vote for Aung San Suu Kyi. Voting for the National League for Democracy or NLD meant voting for the democratic icon.
The NLD party is just one lady show. They didn't able to bring the strong, NLD is not a strong institution. If you look at all the central committee members, they are not elected by the grassroots level. They are just handpicked by the Aung San Suu Kyi.
Once in power, the strength and depth of the NLD in government were tested. Critics say Ms. Suu Kyi's inner circle is made up mainly of loyalists who don't have much say when making decisions. Apart from her de facto leader role as state councillor, she's also the country's foreign affairs minister. She chairs the UEHRD, an enterprise aimed at developing Rakhine State, as well as a body that implements national peace.
So we have the Aung San Suu Kyi, very charismatic leader. But we should not see she can solve all the problems of the Myanmar.
But efforts to groom prominent leaders within NLD have not been particularly successful. It's a party of oldies. Her loyalists are ailing. One of her aides, Mr. Tin Jaw, had to step down 2 years into his president post due to health problems. Another of her trusted men, Mandalay Chief Minister Zom Myen Mao, is currently undergoing treatment for leukemia. The party faces internal issues too. Officials sacked over corruption and misconduct, disgruntled party members quitting over the years. Still, there were campaign promises to fulfill. But it made little progress on bringing peace to the country. And the biggest promise yet unfulfilled is in changing the 2008 constitution written by the Myanmar army. This would allow a civilian government to have full control of parliament without the army's veto power.
ဒီ2008ဖွဲ့စည်းပုံအခြေခံဥပဒေဆိုတာကတော့ဒါအားလုံးသိတဲ့အတိုင်းပဲအလွန်ဒီတင်းကျပ်တဲ့ဥပဒေเนาะ rigid ပေါ့ rigid ဒီ constitution ပေါ့ဟိုဘယ်လိုမှပြောင်းဖို့ပြင်ဖို့တော်တော်ခက်ခဲတဲ့ဥပဒေပါပဲကျွန်တော်တို့ကဟိုစူးစမ်းရမှာပဲကိုကပြည်သူလူထုကိုဂရုပေးထားတဲ့ဂရုကိုရအောင်စူးစမ်းတဲ့အခါမှာတစ်ချိန်နဲ့ရခြင်းမရမယ်နှစ်ချိန်နဲ့ရခြင်းရမယ်သုံးချိန်ရခြင်းမရမယ်အချိန်ချင်းကျွန်တော်စူးစမ်းရမှာပါပဲ
But did NLD overpromise voters?
When the government first came in 5 years ago, because of course it's a very, very big task to turn around a bureaucratic apparatus that's been assembled across 50, 60 years.
The NLD's predecessor, the USDP, mainly because they were starting off from a very low base and they really had no other basis of comparison apart from the military junta, plus that favorable global climate at the time. So the USDP did not face these kinds of challenges that the NLD faced in its first term.
Despite these challenges, the NLD has had some success. Among them, electrification. Half of Myanmar now has access to power, up from just 1/3 when NLD took office. Despite the limited achievements, NLD can still depend on Ms. Suu Kyi to bring in the votes.
I'm really proud of my ladies.
I went to sport for my country, and then I went to sport for our ladies.
Most important thing is Myanmar people are still loving Aung San Suu Kyi and they want to give her another chance.
Perhaps it won't be unconditional love. This time round, voters would likely want to see more promises delivered by the NLD government.
Myanmar labourers make up the largest group of migrant workers here in Thailand. In 2017, the International Organization for Migration says they account for almost 70% of the total number of low-skilled migrant workers holding work permits here in Thailand. I'm in Mae Sot, Thailand, the border city with Myanmar. Just a minute's drive on that bridge from Myanmar. But already I feel I'm in Myanmar. This entire market is filled with Myanmar people. Some are here legally, others don't have the proper documentation. And as migrant workers, they say they still face many issues such as unfair wages and unequal working conditions compared to the Thai nationals. But for another group who are Myanmar refugees, all they ask for is a chance to work. Desperate to carve out a life for themselves and their families, these Myanmar citizens are picking up on any job they can find, not in their homeland but across the border in Thailand. Some have made their way to Thailand with legal documents. Others are in the country illegally. These days, getting into Thailand is proving a lot more difficult. I'm standing on Thai soil over here, but just across the river, if you look over there, that is Myanmar, Kayin State. And that is how close the two countries are to each other. And along this area right now, you're seeing armed guards that are patrolling this entire location simply because they are preventing COVID-19 pandemic from spreading across the border. Initially, the patrols were not as often, but now they tell me that they are patrolling day and night. These armed guards even shared with me that just a couple of days ago, they've even noticed Myanmar citizens trying to swim across this river to come over into Thailand to work. Many a times, this is just one of the many crossings that some of the Myanmar citizens would use to try and get into the country illegally to get jobs and to obviously earn a higher salary. But during this COVID-19 pandemic, Thailand is extremely strict in making sure that the COVID-19 cases in Myanmar will not pass over into Thailand. And therefore, the armed guards are extremely vigilant, particularly during this time. 57-year-old Mama A has been working in Thailand for about 20 years. As a construction worker, she earns about $8 a day. It's not much, but she counts herself fortunate. She tells me that if she stayed in Myanmar, she'd earn far less or be jobless still. But life as a migrant worker means she's at the complete mercy of her employers when it comes to wages and work permit renewals. And she's been taken advantage of. Her last employer owes her and her husband about $160 for their work, but their boss has left Mesot and can't be contacted.
ပတ်စံနေဒီကျွန်တော်တို့လောက်ဝါကနေမရတဲ့အခါကျတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ရွှေပြောင်းအလုပ်သမားတွေကဟိုဘယ်လိုကောမချီးငှားပြီးတော့ဈေးဆိုင်တွေမှာတွေယူစားထားတဲ့ဟာတွေပဲရှိတာပေါ့အဲ့တော့အခုလိုလောက်သွားတဲ့အခါကျတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ကျွေးတွေမတင်သင့်မဲနဲ့တင်တာပေါ့နော်အခုလိုမရတဲ့အခါလေးအခက်အခဲတွေတွေ့နေကိုဗမာပြည်ပြန်ရင်းတဲ့စိတ်တွေတဲ့ခါကျရင်ပေါက်တာပေါ့ဆရာရဲ့ဒါပေမဲ့လူငယ်တွေအဖို့ကတော့ရှားတာလွယ်တာပေါ့ကျွန်တော်တို့အသက်ကြီးတဲ့လူတွေကြတော့အလုပ်ရှားတာခက်ခဲသွားပြီပေါ့
At 36-year-old Myanmar migrant worker Cho Tui may be younger, but she doesn't have it any better. She too has had a fair share of negative experiences with employers in Thailand. But she grins and bears it for the sake of her one-year-old daughter.
ဒါသူ့နိုင်ငံဆိုတော့ကိုကသူများနိုင်ပြပနေတော့လောက်ရတာလေဆိုတော့သူ့လူမျိုးမဟုတ်ဘူးလေသူ့လူမျိုးမဟုတ်ဆိုတော့အခွင့်အရေးတွေကတော့ထိုင်းတယောက်နဲ့တော့ဟိုမတူဘူးပေါ့ဒီမှာမလုပ်ရင်လည်းကိုမြတ်ပြည်မှာလည်းအလုံးမရှိဘူးလေဆိုတော့ကောင်းအောင်ပဲလုပ်ရပါတယ်
The Provincial Business Association is aware of complaints against some companies that flout labour laws, but insists that these employers are few and far between. The chamber has about 700 members, comprising a majority of the companies in Thap province, including Mesot.
เท่าที่ทราบนะครับก็คือตอนนี้เนี่ยส่วนใหญ่เลยครับส่วนใหญ่ทั้งหมดเนี่ยนะเกือบทั้งหมดเนี่ยอยู่ในระบบทั้งหมดนะครับแล้วโรงงานแล้วก็บริษัทส่วนใหญ่ก็ให้การดูแลนะครับเวลแฟร์สวัสดิการค่อนข้างจะดีพอสมควรนะครับบางโรงงานถือว่าให้สวัสดิการแล้วก็ให้เงินเดือนที่ค่อนข้างจะเยอะด้วยซ้ำเยอะกว่ามาตรฐานทั่วไปด้วยซ้ำแต่ว่าก็มีบ้างครับที่ได้ข่าวเห็นก็คือว่ามันจะมีบางโรงงานซึ่งหรือบางพื้นที่หรือเจ้านายบางคนที่เขาไม่ได้ปฏิบัติที่ดีก็มีบ้างครับแต่สัดส่วนตรงนี้ไม่ได้เยอะนะครับก็ถือว่าเป็นประเด็นที่ไม่ได้เป็นประเด็นที่เราเป็นห่วงสักเท่าไหร่แต่ว่าเราก็พยายามที่จะแก้ไขปัญหาตรงนี้ให้น้อยลงครับ
A non-governmental organization that regularly helps migrant workers says the Thai law may be there to offer protection, but it's poorly enforced. This year, the foundation is assisting about 600 individuals with employment issues like unfair work suspensions and salaries below minimum wage.
ถ้าเกิดในพื้นที่แม่สอดหรือในประเทศไทยเนี่ยถ้าไม่มีแรงงานข้ามชาติเนี่ยผมคิดว่าเศรษฐกิจของประเทศไทยเนี่ยคงไม่ได้งอกงามถึงขนาดนี้เนาะอยากจะให้ระบบของกฎหมายแรงงานเนี่ยเพิ่มมาตรการการเอาผิดตัวนายจ้างมากขึ้นนะครับเพื่อที่จะให้นายจ้างเนี่ยไม่กล้าที่จะละเมิดสิทธิ์ของลูกจ้างอีกต่อไปยังไม่จ่ายค่าจ้าง315 บาทในพื้นที่แม่สอดแล้วเนี่ยนายจ้างมีโทษยังไงและจำคุกประมาณไหนอยากจะให้เขียนในกฎหมายแรงงานไปเลยอย่างเงี้ยครับมันจะได้ตัวนายจ้างเองก็ไม่สามารถที่จะละเมิดสิทธิ์คนงานต่อไปได้ไม่ว่าจะเป็นคนงานไทยหรือคนงานพม่า
Even the mayor of Mesot agrees that more can be done to help protect migrant workers. In fact, he'd like to see a better system in place to provide more migrant workers with legal status.
แรงงานเข้ามาได้เลยครับเข้ามาแล้วก็ตั้งระบบให้ดีตรงนี้แรงงานจะเข้ามาเป็นล้านคนครับแล้วถ้าเกิดมีแรงงานมาอยู่กัน สัก 2-3 ล้านคนมีตัวเลขนะครับเมืองแม่สอดก็จะโตเพราะมันจะมีทั้งโรงงานอุตสาหกรรมที่ใช้แรงงานเข้มข้นแล้วโรงงานเกิดขึ้นมันจะมีผลดีต่อท้องถิ่นต่อชุมชนคนพื้นที่ก็มีงานทำนะฮะรายได้ภาษีต่างๆก็ตกกับท้องถิ่น
Thailand is home to at least 1 million Myanmar citizens officially, but the actual figure is likely far higher. In Mae Sot City alone, it's believed some 100,000 Myanmar migrant workers are servicing sectors like garment and electronics. Only about half of them have legal documents. Life is definitely not a bed of roses for these Myanmar citizens working as migrant workers in Thailand. They have to be content with dilapidated housing, and inside each of these huts is just an open space where the dining area, the living room, as well as the bedroom are all rolled into one. Now, the Myanmar citizens do miss their home and they want to return home, but they know that the job opportunities as well as the pay will be much better here in Thailand. Therefore, they tell me that they'll have to just suffer in silence and put up with whatever the Thai employers offer them, because they know that they will just have to be able to live with the opportunities that they will be able to find here in Thailand. But they're the lucky ones. There's another group of Myanmar nationals who will never have that opportunity. They remain behind fences, watched by Thai police. At least 80,000 Myanmar citizens are refugees living in camps in Thailand.
I'm already finished year 12, but I have no work. Proper with food, food, money, yes.
I only managed a quick word with a Myanmar refugee before the police pulled up. Due to COVID-19, no one is allowed to go in or out of the camps. 39-year-old Eko Tuwa was lucky to have been granted rare permission by Thai authorities to live outside the camp. The father of 5 was born in Myanmar but fled to Thailand when he was just 7 years old due to civil war in his Karen state. He's a Myanmar citizen, but he has no ID card, having been born in the jungle. Now he holds a refugee card in Thailand and earns a living by selling cooked food.
I can say that working illegal in Thailand get more pay than in Myanmar. Your daily life is really difficult, you know. Thailand is really a country that we can forget, you know, because it's like our stepmother. Maybe it seems like our stepmother there is better than my own mother. Yes.
Motherland or not, circumstances have driven these Myanmar citizens across the border. Some have become integrated in the Thai society, having worked for years in Thailand, while others are still struggling to find acceptance, searching for a place they can truly call home.